Question 3, Patrick Harvie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. May I add my concern and that of my party for those affected by the shocking events at Grenfell Tower and our concern for those already suffering, grieving or worrying still about friends and relatives and fearing the worst. And may I ask the First Minister when the Cabinet will next meet?
First Minister.
The Cabinet will next meet on Tuesday.
Patrick Harvie.
Thank you. 2 weeks ago, the Government's consultation on fracking and unconventional gas was closed. It's been reported that there are tens of thousands of responses, and the First Minister may already be in a position to confirm whether this is one of the biggest public responses to a government consultation ever. And since it closed, even more concerns have been raised on the health impacts of fracking, with reports of over 150 studies linking the chemicals used in the fracking industry to cancer risk, to permanent lung damage, for example, by exposing workers to benzene and silica dust, amongst other substances. And these concerns extend to the wider public health fears as well. The temporary moratorium, which has been in place for 1.5 years and which we know cannot last for the long term, the government knows that it's going to have to make a decision. They've previously given a commitment that a final decision on a full ban will be made by the end of this calendar year. Now that the consultation is closed, can I ask the First Minister to confirm that timetable and give a clear commitment that the decision will be made and a vote brought to Parliament before the end of this year?
First Minister.
That is the timetable we continue to work to, and let me also restate our commitment to bringing a vote to Parliament. We said that when we launched the consultation, and nothing has changed about that. Patrick Harvie asked me specifically about the scale of the consultation responses. I think it's important to say that final numbers are still being confirmed through the validation and verification process, but in the region of 60,000 responses have been received. A considerable number of those responses have been via postcard and petition campaigns. But it is important, and I'm sure Patrick Harvie will agree with this, it is important that we now properly analyse those consultation responses and use that as the factor that we will take into account when reaching a final decision. Patrick Harvie is right. There is absolutely no doubt about that a moratorium by its very nature is temporary, and we will have always said that that moratorium is in place pending a final decision on the substantive issue. I think it's important also to recognise that the reason we have taken this very cautious and precautionary approach is exactly because of those concerns that Patrick Harvie has outlined. There are many people with a range of different concerns about fracking, from environmental to health to transport concerns. None of those concerns could or should ever have been brushed aside. So that's why we're taking this approach and will continue to do that and take into account all of these views and concerns. And the final point I would make is to reassure people that while this process is underway, that moratorium does remain in place. And what that means is no fracking or drilling for coal bed methane can take place in Scotland until the outcome of this process.
Patrick Harvie.
I'm pleased that the extraordinary number of responses will demonstrate the breadth of concern about this issue, and I'm pleased also that that number of responses will not be used as an excuse to delay the process. Of course, there needs to be analysis of those responses, but we do need clarity, and every one of those 60,000 people deserves clarity that the decision will be made this year. And there will be widespread expectation that that decision will be for a full and permanent ban on these techniques. The SNP's 2016 manifesto said, "We will not allow fracking or underground coal gasification in Scotland unless it can be proved beyond any doubt that it will not harm our environment, communities or public health." And since the publication of that document, we still see SNP activists campaigning wearing frack-off badges, and we hear SNP politicians saying things like, "It's time to bring to an end the Tory days of gung-ho fracking policies in Scotland," or "Jobs, water quality, food and drink would all be unnecessarily put at risk." Comments which clearly are incompatible with a positive decision to give the green light to these techniques. Does the First Minister also agree that if Brexit, in fact, goes ahead as the UK government plans, it will mean that a huge number of the environmental controls and protections which will affect this industry and many others which threaten public health in Scotland will be decided here. Can we seek a clear and absolute guarantee that not one of those regulations will be downgraded, watered down or weakened in Scotland?
First Minister.
Well, to take the latter part of Patrick Harvie's question first, I think even our harshest critic would suggest that the concern about the watering down of environmental regulations post-Brexit is not a concern that people should have about this government. It is certainly a concern that people should have about the current UK government. We take environmental protection and regulation very, very seriously. Indeed, one of my many concerns about the Brexit process is the fact that we will see a fragmentation of that environmental protection through the process of the UK leaving the EU. Back to the issue of fracking, I would have thought Patrick Harvie would have welcomed the fact that he is able to quote so many members of the SNP agreeing with his position. I have described myself previously and would continue to do so as somebody who is personally very sceptical about fracking for many of the reasons that Patrick Harvie has outlined. What we said in our manifesto around this absolutely stands, and that is the standard by which we will assess this issue. But we have embarked on a process of consultation, which of course follows the process of expert research work that we did into a range of these issues, and it is vital that we conclude that conclude that with all due process and in good faith. So we will do that. We will do that in the timescale that we set out and come to a final decision in that timescale. And lastly, again, as I said in my first answer, people in Scotland can be assured that pending the outcome of this process, there will be no fracking in Scotland. That's why the moratorium at the moment is so important.